Fist of Jesus is one of those games that I have a hard time understanding, but not in the way you think. The game's premise, that Jesus resurrected Lazarus only to cause a zombie apocalypse. I can get down with that, although I'm not religious whatsoever, so I don't know if the resurrection part is accurate or not. But the thing that I don't get about this game is that even though it has some reasonable flaws in it, some flaws that I think really hurt the game, I'm still enjoying it. The game has that intangible, that charm that draws you in and makes you overlook its flaws, because you are enjoying your experience. Is Fist of Jesus anything special in the beat 'em up genre? No, but it's still surprisingly enjoyable for me. It's a weird case of a game hitting all the right buttons. There isn't much of a story here, but there's actually a video the game is based off of. Yeah, you heard me. I'll put the link in the description below. But basically, Jesus resurrects Lazarus, however he comes back as a zombie. You and Judas set off to stop the infestation by doing what they know to do best, kicking ass and taking names. Okay, so maybe that's pushing it, but it does set up a hilarious plot point to work with. And yet they haven't done so much with it. Yeah, there's not much plot here, it's a beat 'em up that focuses on the action, but I was surprised with the lack of humor early on. Now there is some, and what humor has been there has worked for me, especially the Dead Sea Scrolls portion. That's at least in the section of dialogue. However, when it comes to animation and art, that's another story altogether. That's what drew my eyes towards the game, the animation. It reminds me of Scribblenauts actually in some weird way. However, the art flows really well and brings the game to life. Jesus and Judas, the two playable characters in the game, show emotions well, as Judas plays the cowardly hero wingman to Jesus's confident character. Facial animations are done well, despite the fact that at times the expression in question seems completely out of place. Again, the art style really makes the game stand out, at least to me. Enemies are colorful, and even though you have repeated enemies like foot soldiers and the like, the different environments and locations bring a new swing of those characters and make them stand out. It's probably the game's biggest strength, and if you don't like the style that is presented here, you're probably not going to like the game. Again, like I said earlier, the charm of the game plays a lot into my enjoyment, at least on this side. But let's get into the gameplay. This is a simple beat 'em up, well, at least control-wise. You have one melee button and one ranged attack with ammo. Fish. Yes, you throw fish at the enemy. You also have 3 special attacks for each of the characters. Judas gets a rain of stars, a Kamehameha wave, and a Kaioken attack, where you're power up and invincible. Jesus, on the other hand, has an explosive attack that makes him make the weirdest facial expression known to man, the ability to summon fish and bread, ammo and health, and summon a wall of fire. These special attacks will recharge over time after use, or if you pick up the right power up, and they are essential to beating levels at times. More on that later. There's no real combo melee system here. No, really, there isn't. Not that you are introduced to. That can seemingly make the game shallow, but I don't find that the case here. Why? Well, the level design. This is a beat 'em up that doesn't necessarily mean kill all enemies and then win. You have multiple different objectives thrown at you during your gameplay. Score X amount of points, kill X amount of mini bosses, and kill X amount of baddies in general. This actually does change up gameplay a little bit, as your aggression and defensiveness is going to be key on hitting those objectives. If you play defensively on levels that you need points on, which you'll probably need large combos on, you're going to find yourself in trouble. If you play aggressively on levels that don't have a lot of health on them, you're probably going to die rather quickly. This replaces the combo system in my opinion in terms of making the levels unique. While at the core they seem the same, how I approached them became different and kept the game fresh for me. Enemies do have variety to them. Basic zombies and foot soldiers come along with weapon varieties like a whip or a cross as well, which you can pick up and use. Larger mini bosses do exist, as well as shield enemies that you can't hit on one side. There's also exploding lepers, aka hit them with a ranged fish or prepare to die. Bosses are also present, and they mix up things a tiny bit, but not too dramatically different from the formula. One different mechanic in this game is that you can switch out Jesus or Judas at any time unless they are knocked out. Now in most cases that wouldn't mean much, but remember, Jesus has a skill that can summon health to the field. Judas is probably a better overall warrior due to his skill set, so you might decide to have Jesus summon health and then bring in Judas to grab it. Skills only recharge on active characters though, so keep that in mind if you are playing the game. There is a progression system where you can unlock powers and upgrade yourself with the coins you collect in levels. Attack, effectiveness of powers, and health are some of the options. Each level will give you up to a 3-star rating. It's very reminiscent of games like Candy Crush and mobile games. Same with the fact that playing a certain amount a day we will get a reward, like a free weapon. Yet there's no pay options or the like there, just a weird coincidence. It makes me wonder if the original intent of the game was to be on a mobile platform, or some future considerations are to be made for it. Now that's not to say the game doesn't have flaws. One of the first things I had trouble with was the hit detection in terms of vertically and enemies hitting me. It's hard to get a judge on where an enemy can hit you or not in terms of up and down on the screen, as there were times I swore I wasn't in the range of something only to be hit by it regardless. This can also happen with ranged enemies in terms of the way they were facing. I took several hits at times from enemies that were not looking at me at the time, and that threw me for a loop. The game in terms of the main overview world does something really freaking strange with the mouse. It may have something to do with the control setup, but when I was attempting to use it, if I left the mouse or control pad alone, it would just mindlessly wander, even not at the same direction at times. It was very odd. In addition, note that if you play with an Xbox 360 controller, you'll have to set up the controls in the menu. It does not default to that kind of controller, and I had to bind pretty much all buttons in order to use it. The game can be difficult as well. You don't die in terms of getting hit by an enemy a lot, but you'll usually lose due to not succeeding in a mission. Most of the time it'll be due to points, at least in my case. So keep that in mind when attempting to make combos and get higher points values. I never got frustrated with it, but more so irritated. There is one other mechanic with the divine punishment. It's sort of like a finisher move. You hit it at the right time, and thus you will either pull out somebody's heart or, pull out somebody's spine. Now, granted, this seems cool and all, but the thing is that in combos, it will reset that bar in terms of that divine punishment if you hit it during that with just a melee attack. That becomes frustrating because you sort of have to hold back hitting a couple of times and then performing the divine punishment. This becomes really critical with mini bosses, and so you're gonna get frustrated if you keep on doing these 1 or 2 hits hoping for that thing to come up. But overall, am I happy with my purchase? I am. Its mechanics are basic but done well, and the game's challenge does come as a surprise in the most part. The art is lovely and really makes the game stand up on its own, but for those who are looking for a more hardcore experience or technical experience with it, look elsewhere. Hey, thanks for watching. If you have a chance, leave some feedback and comments below. If you liked the video, hit that like button. And if you want more content like this, hit that subscribe button. This is Dragonix signing off, hoping that gaming brings as much fun to you as it does for me.